And now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. President Bola Tinubu has charged Nigeria's new service chiefs to deliver results in tackling terrorism and emerging security threats, warning that new armed groups must be smashed right in the head. State House correspondent Adesua Moran reports.
In a ceremony rich in military tradition, President Tinubu, assisted by the service chiefs' spouses, decorates the newly appointed commanders with their new ranks, marking what he calls a renewed push to secure Nigeria and protect its sovereignty. The event, held at the council chambers of the State House, followed their confirmation by the National Assembly. Among those present were the Senate President, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Deputy Senate President, and National Security Advisor. The President commended the armed forces for their sacrifices and patriotism that urges the new chiefs to act decisively and innovatively as security threats evolve across the country.
Our grave concern to our administration is the recent emergence of a new armed groups in the troublesome area of North Central, Northwest, and parts of the South. We must not allow this new threat to fester. We must be decisive and proactive. Let us smash the new snakes right in the head.
He charged them to strengthen intelligence sharing, deploy technology, and work as one team, assuring full government support.
I charge you, as head of our nation's armed forces, to carry out your duties with patriotic zeal. Nigerians expect result and not excuses. We cannot allow the crisis that began in year 2009 to persist any longer.
The newly decorated service chiefs are Olufemi Oluyede, Chief of Defense Staff, who is decorated as a 4-star general. Next, Emmanuel Udendeye, now decorated with the rank of Lieutenant General, retained his position as Chief of Defense Intelligence in the reshuffle of the military hierarchy. Waidi Shuaibu, Chief of Army Staff, is decorated with the rank of Lieutenant General. Also, Chief of Naval Staff, Idi Abbas, is decorated as Vice Admiral. And the Chief of Air Staff, Sunday Aneke, is decorated with the rank of Air Marshal. Speaking on behalf of his colleagues, General Oluyede pledged a safer Nigeria and to safeguard democracy.
I want to assure Mr. President and all Nigerians today that I will do our utmost best to ensure that we rid Nigeria of all forms of criminality and make Nigeria safer so that socio-economic endeavors can thrive. We pledge our loyalty to Mr. President, and we assure you that we will continue to support the flourishing democracy and support all your government aspirations to make Nigeria better.
After the ceremony, he reaffirmed that commitment, urging Nigerians to support the military's mission.
Without the support of Nigerians, we hardly achieve anything. So I want to enjoin Nigerians of all ethnicities to please support us. And at the end of the day, I believe we'll make Nigeria safer.
Nigeria faces evolving security threats from banditry to terrorism and even emerging armed groups. But as the president has charged the new service chiefs to deliver on concrete results, they are in turn pledging a safer Nigeria, loyalty to the country as a whole and its flourishing democracy. But the real challenge is turning that resolve into lasting peace. From the presidential villa, Adesua Omoruan, Arise News.
Thank you, Adesua. Moving on, in a decisive move aimed at reinvigorating leadership, strengthening command structures, and repositioning the Nigerian Army for heightened operational effectiveness, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shuaibu, has approved the posting and appointment of senior officers to key command, staff, and instructional positions across formations, units, and training institutions of the Nigerian Army. Among the newly appointed senior officers are Major General Bamidele Alabi, who has been redeployed to Army Headquarters Department of Policy and Plans and appointed Chief of Policy and Plans, Army. Major General Jamal Abdul Salam, former Chief of Special Services and Programs at Army Headquarters, proceeds to Defense Headquarters Department of Operations as Chief of Defense Operations, while Major General Peter Mala moves from Office of the National Security Advisor to Headquarters Training and Doctrine Command, Nigerian Army, TRADOC, as Commander. In the same vein, Major General Samson Jia from Nigerian Army Heritage and Future Center to Defense Headquarters, Department of Defense Accounts and Budget as Chief of Defense Accounts and Budget, among other appointments. Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibul charged the newly appointed senior officers to bring to bear their wealth of operational experience, administrative acumen, and strategic foresight in driving a disciplined and combat-ready army to decisively confront the contemporary and emerging security challenges. He urged them to sustain the current operational momentum, strengthen interagency collaboration, and remain unwavering in upholding the Nigerian Army's core ethos of loyalty, selfless service, integrity, and excellence. Still with the Army, as the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu makes sweeping changes, the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, retired, pulls out today at a meritorious service to the fatherland. This comes as the new Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyede, has said his leadership of the Nigerian Armed Forces would be anchored on professionalism, discipline, innovation, accountability, and service before self as he leads the armed forces in battle against terrorism, insurgency, and banditry. This was a key part of his speech while assuming command at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja.
The Defense Headquarters lowers its flag before another is hoisted, showing a change of authority. It is the final ceremony as a new Chief of Defense Staff assumes command. Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede takes over as the new Chief of Defense Staff, following his appointment by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Exactly 1 year ago, Oluyede was appointed Nigeria's Chief of Army Staff after the death of Lieutenant General Tarid Lagbaja, 365 days after he has been found worthy to lead Nigeria's military hierarchy. The new CDS pledges to deploy appropriate strategies to mitigate security threats, which is affecting the economic stability of Nigerians.
I wish to reaffirm my total commitment to the defense and security of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The nature of threats confronting our nation, ranging from terrorism, insurgency, and banditry, to emerging cyber, aerial, and maritime security threats, require us to be ever vigilant, innovative, and united.
For the outgoing Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, he leaves the service a fulfilled man, having contributed his quota to securing the nation.
We have recorded significant gains in the fight against terrorism, insurgency, and other forms of criminality, but the work is not yet finished. The gallant officers, men and women of the armed forces have demonstrated extraordinary courage, resilience, and patriotism in adapting to the character and difficulties imposed by asymmetric warfare. They have pushed back the frontiers of terror, liberated communities, and restored a sense of hope to many.
General Christopher Musa will be remembered for leading a professional military, building synergy amongst the armed forces, navigating controversies in the Sahel, and ensuring that Nigeria's military takes her place with pride in Africa. As the sun sets on the careers of the former service chiefs, it shines brightly on the new gentlemen taking the saddle as the new security chiefs. The order from the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces is short and simple: protect Nigeria from all internal and external attacks. From the Defense Headquarters in Abuja, Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
From security and defense, let's move on to oil and gas. Nigerians may be facing another looming fuel price hike as President Bola Tinubu has approved a 15% import duty on petrol and diesel. President Tinubu gave the approval following a request by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, to apply the 15% duty on the costs, insurance, and freight to align import costs to domestic realities. In a letter dated October 21, 2025, the private secretary to the president, Damilotu Aderemi, conveyed Tinubu's approval to FIRS and the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA. With the approval, the implementation of the import duty will likely increase the current cost of a litre of petrol and diesel by an estimated 99.72 naira, pushing petrol prices to over 1,000 naira per litre for the majority of filling stations that rely on importers. Now to power. The Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, has described the anticipated move from a single national grid to potentially multiple integrated subnational markets as a game changer in the electricity sector. Adelabu was speaking at a technical session to mark the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission's 20th anniversary in Abuja. Arise correspondent Charles Eruka has the report.
As Nigeria continues to struggle with the problem of erratic power supply, stakeholders in this sector converge to rub minds on reforming the sector, and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission's 20th anniversary provides a fitting platform. The Minister of Power, who's represented by the Director Distribution, describes the National Electricity Act of 2023 as a paradigm shift that provides for a new structure with immense opportunities.
The National Integrated Electricity Policy Strategic Implementation Plan of the federal government through the Ministry of Power provides a framework to strengthen the relationship between the federal and the state electricity markets. It promotes collaborative yet decentralized approach to energy management and resource planning.
However, key players in the sector, including investors, have their concerns about deregulation, especially with policy inconsistency.
There must be alignment of policy with regulation, with laws, decrees, and every other thing so-called. Today, the Electricity Act we're praising has elements in it that needs to be remedied very, very quickly. And why? The states don't possess the wherewithal to build electricity infrastructure. Let's call a spade a spade.
Some states can generate through renewable energy, that is using solar farm, dam farms. Some gas and some hydro. But you know that in generating power, you need a lot of funding. And so it is not advisable for every state to jump into it and say that we want to generate power. You can't sustain it.
But there's also optimism on the part of NERC's leadership that the power sector's albatross will be overcome.
We have worked very hard to make sure there is communication between the regulator and, of course, the policymakers at different forum meetings that I've had. At the same time with the customers, so that nobody influences the regulations and the rules of playing the game.
The required funds for having an improved transmission system that is robust is very huge. And looking at the macroeconomic situation and the revenue generation by the government, it has shown that we definitely need the private investors to come into the implementation of transmission network projects. We've kickstarted that, and I think it's one of the legacies that I will be proud of.
Nigerians will be hoping that the optimism surrounding the new Electricity Act will also translate into regular and sustainable power across the country. Charles Eruka, Arise News.
All right, a number of stories before us this morning. Very little, or at least a managed time. Rufai, your take on these stories this morning.
Okay, so we all know that there's a sweeping change in the military. President Tinubu has given matching orders as regards, this new service chiefs, what they should do. He will not take excuses any longer and all of that. But we should also be transparent with Nigerians, because we've already also seen many reportages by the side as regards the conversations on what allegedly happened. My point has always been, I say no, and I totally condemn any attempt of a coup. But we cannot also say we are not seeing the reportage in the papers and in online platforms. The question is, could these be linked to these sweeping changes? And what's the clarity about this position? I think in the interest of all, we should be able to know what is going on here, and what the clarity is. Yes, we can also make the argument quickly that the president has the prerogative to be able to change anybody at any point in time. It's at his pleasure, all these people and the service chiefs that work. But also, we are seeing many conflicting reportage. In fact, we've even seen responses by people making denials as regards, oh, I've got nothing to do with what was said. We've also seen people, ask newspapers to make withdrawals of the initial statements that they had made or they had published about what was said. So, in the interest of all of this, we'll need a lot of clarity. The talk about the new service chiefs, it's not today we've been having service chiefs. It's not today we've been having conversations about insecurity. And I'm happy the president talked about the fact that from 2009 till now, this insecurity has continued to raise its ugly head. But the question we should ask is, what enablement will be given to this service chief to work differently? Is it a case of boots on the ground that we need? Or a case of equipment? Or a case of intelligence? Or a case of blocking any form of infiltration? Because like the president said, I don't want any more excuses. I also considerably don't want any more excuses. I want a clear resolution to all of what is going on. But I hope it's not going to be a case months down the line. We'll say, okay, changes have been made, and we'll still complain about the things going on. I think the Chief of Defense Staff, a lot rests on his shoulder, was former Chief of Army Staff. So he should probably know one or two things that should be done. Secondly, the point of 15% tax on fuel importation. There are many questions I'd like to ask. What was the promises made by this government? What were the promises made by this government when they said they were going to pull out subsidy in the first place? So after pulling out subsidy, and we're having extra taxes on importation, is it not a double jeopardy on taxation if the subsidy in the first place that was removed and that we have to now pay the subsidy tax for was supposed to A, be invested in other forms of transportation which we've not seen till date, because we've not seen a real uptick in the CNG. B, invested in infrastructure, which infrastructure still pretty much remains the same. C, be a savings buffer of some sort, which has not worked because when you look at it in entirety, we are still borrowing heavily. I know the government makes a point that yes, for importation, you must put taxation on it so that you will have sort of like an equalization with the local production and give the local production a fair advantage of a balance. But the question is, since majority of the petrol we still consume is still being imported, despite the fact that government refineries are moribund, and Dangote obviously has not met the entire market spread, and this market will still go ahead to import, then what's going to be the hope for the common man? If now we are going up to 1,000 in purchase of these petroleum products. And this conversation also segues into the conversation about multi-grid, which some of us have really advocated for in the past. I think it's going to do a lot of work because we have always said that this unit grid system, that we are always having problems with maintenance, SCADA, electricity drop on the grid and things like that. Probably if we have a multi-grid system, it's going to help a great deal. But who is going to champion the investment of this multi-grid system? I think that's another question we should ask.
All right. Thank you so much. Dr.
Okay,
Matthew,
let me start with the 15% fuel tax on imports. Now, when we first considered the subject this week, I made the point that I read a report that said, despite the fact that the Dangote refinery is productive and it's also trying, to encourage local production with its own creativity and innovation and all of that, that we still import a very substantial amount of fuel into this country, running into billions of dollars. Now, it would seem to me that, okay, the other day when I talked about it, I said, eventually, the cost will be moved to the ordinary people of Nigeria, and we will be the ones to pay the price for this tax. But I looked at the subject further. Do you know that, in fact, there's also something called carbon tax? If they had added carbon tax to it, it would be about 20%, not 15%. The whole issue here from the federal government of Nigeria is that, look, they are trying to protect the local industry. And that protection of the local industry does not mean protecting the Dangote refinery. It is just saying that, look, if we encourage local production, we would have better results for the benefit of the citizen. In other words, this is not a punitive projection by the Tinubu government. It is an attempt to protect local industry and also competition. They've always said that, but the taste of the pudding is in the eating. However, what I would say in this regard is that if they say they are protecting the local industry, we should see it in real terms. Because oftentimes, the people who are importing fuel, who are still importing fuel, who are saying Dangote refinery cannot meet the target, they will push the cost to the ordinary people of Nigeria. The major challenge here is, how are we protected? Even when we say, oh, this is not a punitive measure, this is, protecting local industry measure. That's the major challenge that the government faces. So, based on additional information, I would say that the onus is on the government to prove that what it wants to do is to encourage local productivity and not necessarily to punish the average consumer. So the people who have created this artificial scarcity, raising fuel pump price to 1,000 naira per liter, may well be the people who are importing. So eternal vigilance is what we recommend on the part of the Nigerian government. As for the chief of the defense chiefs, yes, President Tinubu has told them that we want results. We don't want excuses. Please, that's precisely what we also want. We don't want people to come and give us excuses. There are ungoverned spaces, there are this and that. These boys who have been made service chiefs, whether it's Oluyede, he used to be chief of army staff, or it is Ibas, who is now the chief of naval staff. These are battle-tested veterans, so they understand the terrain. And the president is right in giving them their marching orders that, look, you are in this position for you to make a difference. Oluyede tells us, we expect citizen cooperation, we expect people to work with us. That's the same thing we have been hearing all the times. Nigerians, in terms of the results that President Tinubu is talking about, they want a reduction in terrorism, a reduction in brigandage, in kidnapping, in common, felonies around the country. Now, we're also told that there's been a shake-up in the army. That's to be expected. These persons who have been made defense chiefs now, they are colleagues in Cos 38, Cos 39, Cos 40, a few in Cos 40. We will not want to work under them. So naturally, there will be reorganization. This is what we have seen since the days of President President Olusegun Obasanjo. But the rub of it is to say that they will be judged by their results. They must be aware of that. And if they are not judged by their results, if they don't perform, it is a prerogative for President Tinubu to change them again. Because Section 14 of the Constitution says that the primary responsibility of government is security and welfare. Now, very quickly, NERC, the Electricity Regulatory Commission, they are celebrating 20 years. And Mr. Musiliu Useni, who is a man I respect a lot, and also the Minister of Power, Adelabu, they were saying the NERC has done very well in 20 years. No. Their absolute record card that they were presenting to the public should be subjected to some scrutiny. Now, in all of that event, we did not hear about Nasir Rufai. Nasir Rufai, who was in charge of BPE, they were the persons who set up the structure for NERC. He and, what's this boy's name now? Dr. Lanre Babalola, he was also in BP at that time. They set up the structure to say NERC. Then, of course, under the Yaradua government, because of the work that Lanre Babalola had done, they made him Minister of Power. So they continued. Under President Goodluck Jonathan, you had the NERC, being given a roadmap. But under Buhari, that NERC collapsed. What have they been regulating? They have been regulating salaries. Commissioners in NERC, they are better paid than ministers. How much do you pay ministers? But these people in NERC, they collect almost the same amount as the people, the fat cats in the central bank. And then they come to us in 20 years later, the current person say, oh, we have done very well for Nigeria. How have they done well for us? Producing 3,000 megawatts on the average for the Nigerian people. Adelabu and Mr. Osini, they were saying, oh, we have done, did they say 39% improvement? No, that is not true. They talked about the Presidential Power Initiative, which was introduced by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, where are they with metering? They have not done anything in recent over the years. So regulation in the electricity sector has failed. I said yesterday that we have been doing trial and error in the electricity sector since 1960. And that is what I see as they say they are celebrating 20 years. The only person in the report that I read that spoke true to power is Kola Additional. Kola Additional is managing director of Sahara Energy. He was talking about lack of access to capital, the frustration that discos are facing. These are the basic issues. So, but in any case, propaganda. We are faced with propaganda all the time. Let them not come and do propaganda 20 years after. In Doha, I gave the example the other day. They don't have up to 5 million people, 3-point-something million people. They enjoy electricity. Nigeria has gas reserves. One man came here yesterday. What's his name again? Okolugbo. He said in Ukwane that they produce gas reserves and all that. This gas reserve, what have they done for us? NNPC came to us yesterday. Oh, I read the story. They said, we are going to do technical partners. They can't even reproduce the NNNG model in the electricity or the petroleum, oil and gas sector. So these are the kind of contradictions that we face here. Well, no, one other subject. Or have I exhausted the topics?
I believe you exhausted.
I have. Okay. Because I want to say more. Just to show that these people are not serving us well.
All right.
In terms of policy.
All right. And you shouldn't be in this mood today, Dr. Bati, because today is a special day for you, isn't it? I know I'll get you to laugh on that one. Happy birthday to Mrs.
Thank you.
Kike Atandowo Abati. So,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Abati, don't spoil his mood today, please. But, let's get into the serious business, of course, of news. I want to touch on two very quickly this morning of the headlines. The first one, of course, being the news around the 15% import tax on fuel. I would look at it from two sides. Number one, as an opportunity rather than a challenge. So, of course, what is very obvious is the opportunity to support and promote local production and local industries. We have argued many times on this table around the importance of supporting local players like the Dangote refinery and other smaller modular refineries, including the Walter Smiths of this country. However, and so when you talk about it in terms of energy security, its impact on the price of fuel, and even its impact on the economy, especially on strengthening the naira against the dollar when we reduce the pressure of the naira or the dollar on imports. We also talk about its other areas of benefits. Industries create jobs, more prosperity in terms of local prosperity for the country. So there's a big case for encouraging and promoting local production and local industries. There are many advantages to it. However, on the flip side is also the readiness and the timing of this introduction of the fuel tax. So one thing that we often talk about is a holistic overview before a new policy is introduced. The readiness of that sector to embrace or to absorb a new policy. In this instance, a 15% tax on imported petrol. Currently, local production is not able to meet, even though the Dangote refinery has said it many times that, if given the enabling environment, they're able to meet local demand. But as we speak, the current reality is that they are unable to meet local demand, meaning that some import has to be made to augment the supply that we have on the local side. We also have the challenge of feedstock, which hasn't yet been fixed. So with these challenges that we currently face, the current reality, it means that Nigerians will still have to bear the burden of the 15% tax on import petrol until at least local production can meet local demand. Earlier this week, we talked about the Dangote refinery projecting that in the next 3 years, it will increase its production or its output from 600,000 barrels per day to 1.4 million barrels per day. And that is really exciting news. In the last few weeks, we also talked about a bill that was introduced to the National Assembly on protecting local industries like, local refineries against strike actions, industrial strike actions, so that we're able to, continue energy security. And we welcome that development. We welcome the development of the 15% tax based on the federal government doing all it can to provide an enabling environment for local production to meet local demand. As long as that does not happen, or that hasn't happened, then we will see this as a policy, a good policy, hastily introduced. So my question then would be, perhaps the timing is not right, because as we speak about other areas where maybe you put a ban immediately, yet you've not fixed infrastructure. When we're talking about the ban on, soya, we're talking about the fact that they hadn't fixed not soya, the oil that we use.
Shea butter.
Shea butter, thank you very much. Shea butter. And we talked about the fact that infrastructure had not been fixed. So the people end up suffering as a result of a good policy that's ill-timed, or a good policy that is not backed with infrastructure to support the introduction of that policy. And that's why maybe the appeal is that the 15% import tax on fuel is good to promote local production, local industries. However, maybe it should be phased until a time when we're able to ensure that local industries or local production can, at least to a very large extent, meet local demand. I think that's what the push for a number of people in the industry, because it would have an impact on cost of goods and services. When petrol prices go up, it will have an impact on small businesses that already cry under the weight of the cost of doing business as a result of them having to provide power and depend on these fuels. Finally, on the defense chiefs, I think very important to mention, we've set some sort of an agenda for them here on this table. And yes, the president has spoken rightly to say that no more room for excuses. He will give them all the support support they need. What does support look like very quickly? During the Senate screening, they had mentioned funding. And on this table, it said that they have the second highest budget line item under debt servicing. And so, to a very large extent, they have at least, considerable funding. What we want is accountability. We've heard a lot of corruption around the way that monies earmarked for security or defense has been used in ways that are not very, that's not accountable. So that's one thing we ask for. We ask for support from the president in terms of welfare of military and other institutions, including the police, so the police can be equipped to face internal security and the military can continue with border control and also the fight against terrorism. Hopefully in the course of today's show, and as we also witness, I must mention, the pulling out ceremony of General Christopher Musa, who after 39 years of service is going to be sent off and hopefully in a very grand way to celebrate and thank him for the work that he has done. This also is a show to others behind him to see that, we thank them for their sacrificial service to the nation.